Greetings all. Welcome to Aquarian Diary. I'm your host, John Irving. It is July 23rd, 2023. The following is part 2 of a discussion with Debbra Lupien, aka Voice of the Akashic Records. Part 1 of this conversation, which I strongly encourage you to listen to first, was published on July 22nd, 2023. Of course, you can find that on my channel. Many thanks again to Debbra for devoting so much time to this discourse. As usual, I encourage you to subscribe and also hit the notification button to receive alerts when I publish new content. I always include links in the episode description to other content that I reference. Also, if you're interested in a reading with me, I'll include links to that, as well as, of course, to Debra's channel in the episode description.
They want to hold on to the past where they've been, where, they're in charge.
Right.
They're scared to death of where we're going. And that's why it's amping up right now.
That's why what's amping up right now?
Their resistance, their fight against us.
Okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, it's off the... I even commented on this recently in a discussion I had with somebody else where I said, I think it was with Dr. Scott Becker, but I said, now, what they're doing is so overt. Mm-hmm. It's like they're literally saying the quiet part out loud almost every day now. And that is telling because, they used to operate behind the scenes and in the shadows. And now they're doing it in our faces so everyone can see it.
And that's part of what the Orange One brought. He gave them permission to come out from under the rocks and fly their freak flags.
Right.
That's where we have seen people being so overtly racist who wouldn't have done that 10 years ago. They would have been afraid to do that.
Of course, yeah. They would have been ashamed, as they should be. Yeah, so it raises all kinds of questions. So there's people, to me, in my mind, there's levels of kind of karmic responsibility here. If you are consciously aware that you're walking the path of darkness, that's you have more responsibility than, say, somebody who's just, like somebody who steals some food because they're starving is not as culpable as somebody who goes out and literally tries to steal from somebody deliberately, knowing that it's going to harm them and their families and whatever, right? So there's degrees of responsibility. So there must be a large segment of the population who don't really understand what they're doing or why. I'm thinking like sort of on the dark side of the equation, but not very far. And then there's a group that are like, because I have had direct encounters with beings who were really dark and very powerful and extremely intelligent. Like they obviously know exactly who they are, what they're doing, and why. Mm-hmm. But then there's the great masses who are just being manipulated and deceived. So anyway, I'm just trying to understand as this energy comes in, what's going to happen? Do you think that all those people who are sort of more slightly in the middle are just going to come back into reality or adjust, and the dark ones are just going to go hide under the rocks and maybe not incarnate here again after this kind of thing? What do you think?
Well, as we gather together and our numbers grow, the power, the strength of that love, and they've shown it to me as a vision of the sonic boom. It's when we hit that apex point, there's this sonic boom that just goes across the earth, and it's like flattening the wheat and everything. It's so powerful. It goes across the whole planet.
Wow.
And that's like the shift.
Yeah.
Now, I don't think it will be that dramatic. That's a metaphorical representation of it, but that's the power we hold. And that's what we're working towards.
Do you think that's what might occur in that 2028 timeframe? Do you think so?
Well, maybe, but something big is going to happen. Again, if we contrast it with what we just went through with how small the impact was when we shifted into fourth dimension, almost you could not notice it. Will it be a big dramatic thing? I don't know.
So was it Metatron who said June was the 4D shift?
Yeah.
Okay. So he didn't give a specific date, or I'm just curious about the astrology. Probably not.
Just June.
Okay. Yeah.
But early, I think, like the month of June kind of thing.
Right. That's absolutely fascinating. I'll have to start. Like, I personally have noticed a big shift, but I attributed it to some transits in my own astrology. Um, so, if people are listening to this and they have thoughts about that, you can put them in the comments because I'm really curious about whether other people are perceiving that in the same way or
Yeah.
how they would experience it or address it, or explain it. I mean, that's super. If what you're saying is accurate, I mean, that's probably one of the biggest things that's happened on Earth in like tens of thousands of years, if
Yeah.
ever.
And the weird thing is that Gaia is still moving through her transition to 4D. She's not there yet. So obviously, we're going to feel something when she gets there.
Hmm. Do
She's
you have a
still going
sense of
through this rebirthing. No, I don't. And when I ask for clarification, can you give us any kind of a timeline? It's like it will take the time it takes. It's her process.
right? They probably know and just don't want to tell us,
Well, probably because they don't want to freak us out and all that stuff. And,
right?
they want to keep
So
us calm.
so the idea is that humanity as a species is evolving and going to the next stage of our evolution.
Yeah.
But that in order to do that, the planet itself has to go through a similar process in its own way, right? That
Yeah.
it's all a parcel. It's like one package.
Yeah. And right now, the dark ones, they're kind of in 4D, but they still have a foot in 3D. In spite of themselves, they're part of it. They can't shift out of that. It's the energy of the planet. But yeah, so they're fighting against us. And that's why we're feeling it so intensely right now. And that's why we're seeing this blatant stuff where they're just saying out loud what they're planning to do
Right.
without fear of repercussions. They have
Yeah.
got so arrogant and full of themselves, they think they're unstoppable. Well, they're wrong.
Right.
But here's the other thing that's hard to wrap your mind around. It's like, as a human, I judge that as a bad thing, but spiritually, they're just on their path. They're at a different level than you and I are, and they're still perfect souls. So, in their reality, what they're doing is a good thing. And all those fundamentalists who have, trailed along like the Pied Piper behind them, they think they're in this self righteous state where they're doing a good thing.
Right.
They're so confused. To us, it's a bad thing. In their reality, it's not. So the only hope we have in we'll be stronger than them, so we will overcome them, but helping them to come out of this comatose state that they're in is just showing them the love and not going into resistance against them. That's the really big hard part of this battle. Staying out of fear, because that's the psychic battle. If they get you tangled up in fear, they're going to beat you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it gets complicated because, like I said, we're dealing with many existential things here. So that if, which is like literal threats against to society, civilization, humanity, there's certain things we just can't. Like I could give all kinds of examples, like of stuff that is like literally outrageous and atrocious that certain people would do if they had the ability or free will to do it. That I'm like, no way, that's not happening. And like we're not going to let you do that. Go F yourself. Like I don't personally care what other people think, what their philosophy, their religion. You can think whatever you want, right? But when it comes to imposing your values or your weird worldview on other people or interfering with them or harming them or like, yeah, that's why we have laws and that's why we have police and all kinds and militaries and, to protect ourselves from crazy people. So yeah, there's a line there, but so yeah, we can love them, but at the same time, we can't let them take over, or we're screwed. We'll be like in the Dark Ages again.
Right. We're not going to. We are going to win. That's guaranteed. And
Right?
I think what we're seeing happening in Florida right now is a little microcosm.
Yeah.
Now, that has the potential for getting people's attention and making them rethink what's right and wrong. Because I know people who live in Florida who think that their governor is just all that, and they're so grateful he saved their business during the pandemic and all of that stuff. At some point, they're going to need to wake up to see what a devastation he's wrought upon them. And then that will have ripples,
Yeah,
which will,
I shared an article today about how the Florida Republicans are changing the curriculum and they want to teach about the benefits of slavery,
yeah.
how it was a good thing in some ways. And I'm just like, are you like completely delusional or
Right. Well, why
twisted?
don't you volunteer to be a slave and demonstrate for us the benefits?
It's insane. But
Yeah.
that's, like that's what I mean. They're saying the quiet part out loud now,
Mhm.
right? Like they would be happy with slavery. It's the same thing
Which,
as what happened in the during the Civil War in the United States.
It's like they're punch drunk on power. They've gotten to a certain level and it's just taken them over the
Yeah,
top to insanity.
but it's not. But they have a lot of supporters. There's a lot of people who vote Republican in Florida. Like, how could you not see that this is morally and ethically wrong? Like, it's just stuff like
Well,
that.
how could they not in Texas when they were throwing little children into the river
Oh yeah,
and leaving them out to freeze? It's unfathomable to us, but they justify it somehow.
yeah,
And that shift we've got to make.
yeah. And that's so you're saying that through force of love and not being enforced, but just the power of love, that these people will help change them. Is that what's going to happen, or will they just over time stop incarnating here? Like, is it going to be a multi-generational thing, or is there going to be some event like that, what you described as the sonic boom, that just shifts everybody's consciousness? Like, that's what I don't understand, is how we get from here to there. And if you're talking about it happening within 5 years, that is like absolutely a phenomenal thing to think about.
Well, I because we're seeing the acceleration of the darkness right now, it
Yeah,
makes sense that the big sonic boom would happen sooner. Something's got to stop that before it does go over the top and into, you know, forever darkness.
yeah,
So yeah, I the energies are picking up there. Everything is accelerating. And if we are able to meet their corruption and just the atrocities with that solid wall of love that's impenetrable, some of them will be influenced by that and they will come over and help us. They'll become allies.
right.
Others will never. They're going to stay there,
Yeah,
but we will outnumber them and we will just move forward, walking against it,
yeah.
protected with angel armor, and we will overcome them. But we don't overcome them if we get into resistance.
Right. Young people, millennials and Gen Z and all that, they're extremely progressive.
Mm-hmm.
Like the percentages, they're like in the 80% range. It's like, those people are starting to, either they're of voting age now, if they get mobilized, if they actually go out and vote. I mean, there's enough people right there just to shift the entire thing.
Yeah, that's hope.
Right. And then, of course, they're going to get older too. Right. They're so far out of alignment with generally the right wing that's just, at least in the United States, from the polling I've seen, that it's not even funny. It's crazy how they're like that. To me, the hope lies in large part with the younger people.
Absolutely. And a lot of the younger people who have incarnated over, 20 years or so have come in a more awakened state. So they didn't have as far to go as we did.
Yeah.
So that's also to our benefit.
Yeah. Like a lot of the issues, a lot of the culture war stuff to them is like a complete non-issue. It's like,
Mhm.
it's not even debatable. It's like, it'd be like debating gravity.
Yeah,
So yeah, that's that. Anyway, we'll see. In fact, I was reading an article today in Politico, a really interesting article about how the shift in all the college towns in the United States, and the young people around these universities and colleges are getting like really activated and mobilized, and they're actually shifting state political outcomes. So cool.
that's part of what triggered the dark side to step things up
Yeah.
because they see, oh, they're going to soon outnumber us. We've got to do something now. What I just can't fathom are these women who go along and support it. Don't they see that we are on that slippery slope that Iran went through? They could end up wearing burqas
I
if
don't
this
get
keeps
it.
going.
Yeah, no, it is completely unfathomable to me. Like, outside of something like brainwashing, I can't comprehend how any. I mean, there might be the odd person out there who's just very peculiar or contrarian, right? Who could want to live like that, but I mean, they must actually be a tiny minority. Like, what is up with them? Do you have any sense of that?
Well, I grew up in a place that was very rural, very disconnected from the big wide world. I don't think I even knew a Jewish person where I grew up. So very white toast America. In Ohio, by the way, which was not like it is now, people cared about each other, but there was bigotry around. So in that little microcosm, I was very sheltered from the big outside world, very unconscious. I barely knew about Vietnam. There are people like that still out there.
Right.
Thanks to the internet, there's less reason to be. But when I was of voting age, I wanted to read about what was going on, get to know the candidates, and make a wise choice. The only thing available to me was all right wing stuff.
Okay.
So if that's all you're getting, you don't have another reality. You got to pick from the best of that.
Right. It's a little harder to buy that, like you said, in the age of the internet, where you can read anything anywhere pretty much at any time. Unless you just get your news from social media or something.
Yeah, well, except you have to have the sensibility to be able to discern what you're reading, whether it's true or not, because there's a lot of negative
Sure.
stuff out there,
Yeah.
which,
Yeah, but we all know it's what fundamental rights and wrongs are. Like when we do something that's immoral or unethical to another human being, we know there's part of us that knows what we're doing.
I think that the right of this whole issue of life and the fetus to such an extent that these people are in their righteous indignation that life is the most important thing, totally forgetting that there's got to be a woman who's involved with this who should have some choices about her body. And what happens to that child after it's born? You don't give a crap.
Yeah.
Why is the fetus more important than the living, breathing child? They're so tunnel vision on that one issue. So they very cleverly brought them in because emotionally it was all about gotta save the babies.
Right. Yeah.
And the simple-minded people who didn't have exposure to critical thinking were just swept away in that wave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So until it impacts them personally, they don't care. That's what's going to happen. It's got to impact them personally.
Yes. Yes. I agree. I mean, I'm agreeing with you. I mean, there's people like, they're doing something and they're like, oh, I don't care. I won't be here when XYZ happens, and I'm like, how could you be so selfish? Right. Or people who like will just litter, like they just throw stuff on the ground knowing that somebody somewhere is just going to come along and pick up their garbage. Like there's just people of that kind of mentality who are very unconscious and unconscientious. That's a fact of life, right?
Yeah.
Right. That's just the where some people are at. But so in terms of this whole dark and light thing, I'm trying to think if there's anything I haven't, and because what's going to happen, we'll get off this discussion, and then I'll be like, oh, geez, I can't believe I didn't ask that. That's what's going to happen. I can guarantee it.
Well,
We go ahead.
that's perfect because then there's opportunity for more conversation. We have to keep
Yeah,
talking about it and expanding our consciousness. That's what we're here to do.
right. And but just to sort of put a fine point on that, you're saying that there is an actual dark side and it is conscious, it knows what it's doing and it knows what it wants and it has an agenda, that it's not just happenstance that what we're experiencing.
Yeah, but it's not the devil. It's not what we were taught that was dark. These are just souls that have made a conscious choice to walk the dark path rather than to pursue alignment with their soul purpose.
Right. Right. And fair enough, because people do that in crime, people do that all the time.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just reality. Look at Putin. I mean, like I can't believe that a whole country puts up with that kind of stuff, but they do. It should tell you something about our state of evolution as a species, right? That we're so I should ask what other manifestations of 4D you're anticipating, because this is a big topic. Like how is that going to affect us as individuals in our daily lives and things like that?
Well, they've been telling me for a couple of years that this process we're going through as we move into 4D, they have been rewriting our DNA. So if you experience these weird physical symptoms and you didn't know what they were about, like I kept waking up with these horrible leg cramps, which was not
Yes,
a normal thing.
me too.
And yeah, and some people were getting the flu, but it wasn't really the flu. Those were physical manifestations of our DNA being rewritten. So then my logical mind says, okay, if our DNA was rewritten, we ought to be able to validate that medically, right?
Yeah, I guess.
And yet we're not hearing anything from medicine that they're seeing anything new. So that's a big question. But
Well,
does it matter? No, it probably doesn't. It's what we feel and how we use what we have now because we're at a higher level of consciousness. We have more access. If you're not accessing your Akashic records, you are doing yourself a huge disservice.
Well, what is that? So, okay, you just opened up a whole can of worms there, a few of them. Well, I was going to say, first of all, that I've had this thing been happening lately where, like I said, I'm laying in bed at night, like completely just wide awake, but then I'll just start sweating suddenly. And I'm like, why am I suddenly so hot? Just like at 3 o'clock in the morning. Like I'm just laying there going like, what the hell? And it'll last for maybe an hour or something. And then I just go back to normal. And I'm like, am I sick or what the hell's going on? It's just
Well,
crazy.
3 o'clock is like this magic hour where a lot of spiritual things seem to happen. I know people who get woken up at 3 o'clock to download messages. So I always say to them, do you enjoy getting woken up at 3 o'clock?
Yeah.
Well,
I
who does?
if
So
I it, I was going to say if the next day I'm not just like in a complete brain fog, I'm fine with it, right? But I don't want to wake up the next day and be so zonked out I can't think.
yeah, so here's the thing. You are a sovereign soul. So you can say to them, listen, I know you've got to do this stuff, but could you do it when I'm awake? So let's do it at 10 o'clock in the morning instead of 3 o'clock. So if you're channeling and you're downloading stuff in the middle of the night and you don't like that, which who would, you can say to them, hey, I am here. I'm willing to listen, but let's do it during the daylight hours. And you can even tell them when. You get to decide. Don't be a victim of your gift.
Well, I wasn't. For a while I just thought maybe I have some kind of weird flu or something.
Yeah, well, first you have to come to that awareness.
Right.
And once you do, then express your sovereignty. They're waiting for you to do that.
Yeah,
But the
I'll ask.
reason they come at 3 o'clock is because that's when they're able to get through.
Right. It makes sense because my brain isn't going like 500 miles an hour at that time usually. I'm
Yeah.
not thinking about stuff. My mind is very active. Okay, so what do you think the other physiological expressions of this, like this in 4D, are we going to have talents and capabilities and uh, psychic gifts and things like that we wouldn't ordinarily?
Well, the psychic gifts are expanding, but you've got to meet them halfway. You've got to step into it. You've got to inquire about it, use it, experiment with it. Be
Hmm.
playful with it, though. Don't take it all so seriously. The angels are constantly saying, you people are way too serious. You got to lighten up. Because when you do, you shift into that fun, playful connection with inner child energy. Your energy shifts into a space where you can access more, the greater part of who you are.
Yeah, well, that I think answers my question about why your presentation is rather theatrical.
Maybe. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. So what do you okay, have they told you anything else like that is really kind of mind-blowing that you think people might be going like, holy crap, really? That we haven't mentioned?
So many things. Nothing is coming to mind at the moment, of course, but
What about
con-
ETs? What are we gonna be are we gonna be
oh yeah.
openly
Yeah. I personally didn't believe that there are ETs inside the earth, which is one of those stories that goes around. I was told by Metatron, yes, indeed there are. So okay, I believe Metatron. If he says it, it's got to be true.
but are we gonna be in communication with them openly?
We already are.
I mean, as far as the public is concerned.
Doesn't really matter if you have your own truth and your own connection. Because here's the thing, I asked one time, what percentage of people on Earth right now originated on Earth versus how many are star seeds? Meaning we've lived on other planets. And only 43% are based on Earth. The rest of us are star seeds,
Interesting.
which makes sense because we need the star seeds to bring forth this big shift.
Yeah, I'm quite certain I'm a star seed. It's in some
Oh,
capacity.
yeah, you are. Absolutely.
But I'm not sure where I'm from. I mean, who knows?
I do. I took a peek. I
Oh,
do.
oh, can you say? Go ahead, say it.
Do you want to go into that now? Because
Well, I
I
mean, it just
take a,
don't reveal things that would be embarrassing, but
no, it's
other than
unfair.
that, go for it. So this is like a live reading?
I like to know who I'm talking to, so I check
Okay.
the records before I talk.
All right. Okay.
Oh, yeah. You are from the Blueprinters group, which I'm starting to think are the Anunnaki, who came here early when humanity was in the early stages of evolution, before there was consciousness, before there was emotion, uh, very instinctual, primitive. They came and they worked with the beings here to evolve them. So the blueprinters are very much engaged with Earth because it's kind of their creation.
Oh,
So they come back at times when we're in the middle of evolution, and they are here in great numbers right now.
oh,
So that was where you started out on. And then at some point you shifted and you spent a lot of time with the Palladians. So that also shows up for you. So you said you had two. Those are the two I'm seeing.
very interesting. I do have I know I'm aligned with the color blue in terms of like the spiritual, they
Mhm.
designate people into groups of color. Blue was my color. And I once had an experience where I saw myself um designing solar systems. Yeah.
Blueprinters go way, way back. Very ancient.
Yeah, like the placement of planets and all the little details, they all matter to creating the solar system. Like every little detail is really important.
Mhm.
And so I think on some level, the solar systems are actually intentionally created, or at least some of
Oh
them
yeah.
are kind of taken care of like you take care of a garden, right? Like the astrology of Earth would be very different from any other star system in the planet, in the universe, rather.
Yeah, absolutely. I was once given a vision of when Creator made the planets, and it was just our solar system. So he's taking like a hunk of mud and rock and crafting it, and then he took the souls of something that kind of resembled the Titans. That was the energy I felt, and a soul of each of those went into the planet. So they all have souls.
Right. Yeah, the planet has a soul. Yeah.
And so then they were all put out there specifically. And then it was communicated to me that, Creator is not going to let us destroy this planet. Just isn't going to happen because
Good.
that has an impact on other planets. So, that's all protected. And that, of course, would have been replicated over many other solar systems and galaxies, what have you. We're not alone. There's a lot out there.
So you don't have any vision or clarity around whether or if or when humanity, consciously as a whole, might be interacting with alien species.
Well, a lot of us are now. It's happening. We're connecting with them. For instance, there are a lot of Palladians who are connecting with their Palladian selves. Some people will find themselves going outside and just staring up at the stars, like the kind of Milky Way area, which is
Yeah,
where
I
the
do that.
Palladians are from, that area. And they have this kind of a longing for home, some of them.
Mm-hmm.
They don't know why. Well, that's because you came from there. That's your home.
Mm-hmm.
This is
Yeah, but
not.
I meant in terms of like front page of the New York Times, there's a spaceship and they're landing and humanity is going like, holy crap,
Yeah, well, that
that
would
kind of thing.
interfere. They're not allowed to do that.
But that's what I'm saying. At some point, though, I think we will be engaging with them on that level, but it may not be for centuries. I don't know.
I believe when we get to Earthtopia. And the other thing I got recently was when we get to Earthtopia, we will have shifted to a higher level of consciousness so that now we can step up and take our place in the Galactic Federation.
Right. I've said before here or in a conversation with someone that, they're not going to come and introduce themselves when we're acting like, you know, we're in the dark ages. Like,
Yeah.
why? What it makes it's completely illogical.
So that's a ways off yet. Maybe after 2028, when we're in a whole different place,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
that
Like
could.
a lot of people who subscribe to strict religious paradigms could literally go crazy in those kinds of circumstances. So, because it's so outside of it, it contradicts their whole worldview, right? So, I should also ask you to, and we won't go too much longer, but I should ask you to define Earthtopia because you've used that term a few times. It's a great word, but what does it mean?
It means that we will have evolved to a place where we will all be functioning from a place of our soul, not our ego.
Right.
We are right now coming into oneness with ego, higher self, and soul. We won't be three separate aspects warring against one another sometimes. We will come together in oneness with purpose. So when I wrote the book in 2017, Akasha Unleashed, I was given this vision. They said to me one day, ego is not your enemy. And so then I got this download and I did this meditation where I was in a powwow with the three aspects of myself. We're all sitting together, cross legged on the floor in this little triangle. We had a conversation. We came to a meeting of the minds. We made a compromise. And ever since then, there's been more functioning in oneness, less of ego trying to run the show. And in this conversation, I mean, you can read it, it's all in the book, but in this conversation, what came out is that ego was very petulant and just feeling like she was being pushed around and she just wanted to have a say in the matter. So it's like, okay, let's talk about this. And these are the things soul wants to do. And you probably will really enjoy them if you'll loosen up and come along for the ride.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like that. And so then later I was inspired to record it as a meditation to add it to the book as one of the downloads. This year, it's being pushed upon me. No, that isn't just saved for the book. You got to put that out there for everybody. So this year I've been sharing it all over the place. Here's the link. Go there, do the meditation, work on coming into oneness. That will help you with your consciousness raising, will help you find more peace, more clarity, and put you on a better track as we move forward to Earthtopia. So back to your question, in Earthtopia, we will be in that state of oneness.
Right.
So it will be all about doing what we would consider the right thing, taking care of one another, supporting one another, working for the common good.
Yeah. I mean, I've made the argument many times here that there's enough food and resources to take care of everyone on the planet. They're just not distributed fairly.
Yeah.
Like there's no need for people to not be educated, to not have health care, to not have housing, to not have enough food. It's just absurd. Like there's no excuse. But and the only thing that prevents that from happening is hoarding and greed and lust and power and all those fundamental things that were talked about in the Bible, actually.
Yeah. So that will be swept away. It'll probably be there on the fringes. But as long as you're choosing to walk the path of your soul in the light, it will be utopia on earth, therefore Earthtopia. And if you're a follower of the Christian Bible, that would be like when they talked about the 1,000 years that came after Jesus' second coming. So, there's a little bit of a kernel of truth there. And we can see that being played out.
Yeah. Yeah. To me, that would be the Age of Aquarius, sort of.
Exactly. Yeah.
Right. And who knows what a year meant in those terms? I don't know. Right. It could be whatever.
And it doesn't matter what you call it. It's going to be a time of peace and love.
Right. Well, and again, you don't have a clear sense of when Earthtopia gets here.
Metatron is teasing me that it's 2028. Right. Now, will it come in
soon?
I know, it just seems impossible it could be that soon. And yet we are teetering on the precipice, so it better be soon.
Right. Yeah. Well, you wouldn't necessarily know it looking out your window these days, but we'll just have to keep paying attention and see what happens. Because I mean, right now we seem to be, like I said before, things are getting increasingly polarized. Like I read about stuff now that just to me, like I thought what I read yesterday was crazy, and what I'm reading today is even crazier. You know what I mean? And so we haven't reached that peak, or what did you call it? The point of
the apex.
The apex. Does the apex come before 2028? Do you think, or do you think 2028 is the apex?
It feels like it is the apex, but I don't have that many details yet.
Right.
When I get more, I will definitely share them.
Please do.
I put out a monthly forecast from Metatron.
Right.
So whatever he is willing to share, I put it all out there. I don't hold anything back because that's my job. But I don't know yet.
Right.
We're not ready to know yet because we are right now absorbed in this mission of getting our sea legs, of being strong, standing up against the dark ones in this psychic battle, standing in love, not resisting, but having that force field of love.
Yeah. And love is like being responsible for other people and taking care of the planet and, being fair and right and justice, falls under the umbrella of love. So, when people, I think, get really passionate about, say, for example, social causes or social justice or environmental issues or whatever, they're actually motivated because they want to preserve or protect these things that are critical to everybody, right? Our common shared resources. So that's actually coming from a place of love, fundamentally.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you have anything else you want to add that we didn't talk about?
Yeah, right now is a time to focus on self-care. Work on yourself, get yourself to the best level of health you can be. Be strong and robust, take care of this body because you need it to last for the entire soul journey. You don't, and we are going to live longer, we're being told as well. So your lifespan is going to be expanded just by virtue of being in this evolutionary period.
Mm.
That means it's even more incumbent upon you to take care of this body so it will see you through, because you don't want to get to the end of it and be rickety and out of shape and not able to fully experience Earthtopia.
Yeah, the battle has been very hard for a lot of us. We've gone through a lot of really challenging things, a lot of us, and it's been completely exhausting. And at times you can just be kind of like, oh my God, this is just, there's a lot of people who just, well, there's some people who just are kind of like, okay, I'm done. This has been too hard, too difficult, too exhausting. I just want to get the hell out of here. Right. I'm not advocating that. I'm just saying, I know just from talking to people that a lot of people feel that way, that being in this very dense, challenging place and situation has just really taken a lot out of people.
It has. And for those who don't want to stay, who are tired, they're free to go. It's okay. There's no judgment about that.
Yeah. 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 But your point is taken. It's a good one. Anything else?
The self-care is huge, and learning to love yourself is so important. That goes along with it. So that ego meditation will help a lot with that. Because here's the thing, this comes directly from Creator. You are magnificent, brilliant, resplendent, and perfect right now in this moment. Tomorrow you'll be more so. That is how your Creator sees you. If God tells you, my beloved child, you are my masterpiece, I made you in rough format and put you here to have this experience so that you could co-create with me and take this rough material masterpiece, create your own masterpiece out of it. God says that to you. You can argue?
Right. But then again, I mean, just to play devil's advocate for a second, I do readings for people, astrology readings, of course. And I've done some readings for some just mind-blowing people. Just wow, absolutely super impressive. And some of these people have gone through things that I'm not sure I could literally survive. Like really, really brutal, difficult life experiences and challenging circumstances. And I know I'm speaking with somebody who's like an advanced soul, but they're alive and their experiences have been, in some cases, just mind-bogglingly brutal. For whatever reason, maybe they're clearing up karma, or maybe they just set something very challenging. They had a very challenging agenda for this lifetime. So yes, you can say, oh, God made you and you're supposed to be resplendent and beautiful and perfect. But at the same time, why the hell did God do that to these people?
God didn't do it. We did it. We,
Well, some of these experiences that I'm describing happened to people in their childhood, for example.
yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing we got to get over. People think, oh, you're telling us that that beliefs makes us a victim. No, we choose our mother either based upon karma that we have to work out or based upon the energetic situation that will set us up to heal old traumas. So I incarnated into a family where I was abused and victimized. I had been murdered in my most recent past life by my husband. So I brought all that victim energy into this lifetime. And it was about coming out of that. And that took me years. It was my 40s before I finally came out of all
Right,
that low
right,
self-esteem and victimization energy. But that's what I chose for myself. My human side didn't know that, of course. I can only see it in retrospect.
right,
I had to go through that to come out to be the sovereign, empowered soul so that I could do this work that my soul came here to do.
right.
So
Yeah.
when you
Uh,
go through that, you attract it because it's helping you to resolve that old karma,
right.
to learn,
Yes.
to grow.
Yeah, I understand that. I mean, I do karmic astrology, so I can see all these patterns and things in people's charts that kind of give a lot of clues that I can infer a lot from an astrology chart about, what you're here to do and why. But it doesn't necessarily make those experiences easier because a lot of these people are just kind of sitting there going like, why the hell is this happening to me? What did I do? Right? I don't even know what I did. It doesn't feel fair, if you know what I mean. It feels
Mhm.
unjust. And so that can lead to this kinds of, just that goes back to playing the devil's advocate about your
Mhm.
comments earlier. That's all.
Yeah. But when you come into the awakeness of being the sovereign soul and realize, oh, I see why that happened. I needed to understand, to learn and grow from that, to become who I am. Like one time I asked them, why would anybody choose to incarnate as a Native American? They know they're going to have a harder life than they would if they'd gone somewhere else. And they were like, don't you dare feel sorry for them. That's disempowering them. They chose that for a very specific purpose. They wanted to be there with those people. They had plans, things they wanted to accomplish. So don't disempower them by thinking that way.
Right. Yes. Yeah. I mean, this is a. Yeah, I'm sure some people listening. I'm not saying that my what I was describing is accurate. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in its conclusion, I'm just saying that is kind of the psychology at play for a lot of people,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
And it's true that a lot of advanced souls do tend to choose challenging incarnations because they have the capability of pulling it off. It can go either way, though, still, but
Yeah.
because it's risky. It's risky, like we were describing 45. That scenario can occur, but still, you know, I'm just saying that psychologically, those are the kinds of questions that arise in people's minds, you know, in this contrast.
And if they can understand and see why it happened and what they were to learn and get from that experience, it really helps put it in perspective, then to be empowered by it rather than to feel victimized. That's what we're moving towards.
Yeah, and it's easy to say that though in hindsight, as you know,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're in the
Yeah.
middle
When
of
you're in
it.
it, it's hell.
Yeah, exactly. That's my point.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, I agree.
So, there needs to be some kind of compassion for that. Now, like maybe humanity's evolving to a point where those kinds of experiences will just be a lot less common, maybe. But our current reality, there's still a lot of darkness here on Earth. It's a very dark planet in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it's kind of in the infancy when you think about it from that greater perspective. But
Yeah.
we knew that when we came here, we chose it. As light workers, this was our big opportunity for a massive spiritual growth because of going through this, facilitating Earthtopia.
Well, yeah. I mean, if what we're describing is accurate, this is an extremely rare event. So clearly, there's some degree of privilege associated with just the fact that you're here now. Like,
Yeah.
obviously not every being in the universe is incarnate on Earth at this time. So
Right.
so how we got through that screening process or why, I don't really know. Do you?
We were a match for the circumstances.
So we
We
got
were
lucky?
ready. I don't know if it's lucky. I think it work over many lifetimes of and preparing for this.
Yeah,
Many lifetimes we spent preparing for this lifetime where we would finally embody our soul, our gifts, where in past lifetimes we couldn't because we would be murdered for it.
right. Yeah, that came up in our email correspondence, didn't it?
Yeah.
Right. That because I was talking about how, like, for example, I'll say it here. Your channel is about you have about the same amount of subscribers that I do.
Mhm.
But some of the stuff that you put out there, I'm like, wow, it just surprises me that you don't have a larger audience. And so I queried you by email saying, like, what's going on with that? Like, why are we, you know, like I listen to a lot of the stuff out there is just to me really superficial and, not substantial and whatnot. And I'm kind of like, I don't get it. Right. So anyway, you replied to my comment about that with an interesting statement, which maybe you can repeat.
Sure, it's the cloak of invisibility. It's something I puzzled about myself for a long time because I'm like, Metatron, you're telling me I need to get this message out to the masses. You got to help me here because I'm doing everything I know to do. And yet it's not happening. And so then I was given this understanding it's a cloak of invisibility. It's because of all those lifetimes of being killed, tortured, and ostracized for who we were. And I've seen some of those lifetimes. So we brought all of that energy. And it's terrifying as a light worker to stand up and say, this is who I am, because who knows what will happen if you do.
Right.
So I'm having this conversation with them and I'm like, I'm here. I'm willing to do whatever you want me to do. I'll be the voice. But I really like being able to just go to the supermarket and be anonymous. I don't want to rise to the level where that's an issue. Well, that was part of the problem. And I finally saw that. It's like that was me holding back. That was my cloak of invisibility. I wasn't willing to cross that line. So I finally had to say, okay, I accept. Whatever, bring it on. I'm willing to go out there and do that. don't you know, about a month later, I go to the supermarket and somebody stops me and says, "Aren't you on YouTube?
No way. That's hilarious.
What's your channel?" And oh my gosh, the angels have such a sense of humor.
So wait, you're basically saying that that because of past life experiences, you just adopted this energy about you of not wanting to be seen and about trying to remain invisible to protect yourself, which makes perfect
Yes,
sense. Like
no
I don't know,
hiding.
I've talked to so many people who have had past lives where they were hung, tortured, killed for, speaking their truth. It's totally understandable. So how do you can you describe the process or technique that you would use to rebalance that or to get that habit, a past life habit, out of the equation?
It's coming to terms with it yourself. Are you really willing, because that's what you came here to do?
Right.
Are you willing to fulfill that and step out, no caveats, full force doing it? Because that's what it's going to take. And until I got that straight in my head, oh, I really was holding back, even though I didn't realize it. And that just happens over time. It happens over you becoming more aware of who you are as a soul, connecting, always learning, expanding, growing. And that's what I help people to do. So as you do that, you'll get these little breadcrumbs of awareness. Maybe you get messages from nature. I get them all the time that will help you to understand, oh, that's what's missing. And it's creating your own little puzzle. You're putting the pieces together to
Mm-hmm.
see the bigger picture. That's what
Mm-hmm.
we're all doing. And when I finally got that, it was like, oh, now I know it's going to start expanding. And then you reached out to me not long after.
Oh, really? Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So, oh, that's fascinating. Okay, so now the reason I brought up the thing about the cloak of invisibility, because in our correspondence, I'm like, you threw that out there, and I was like, oh, I hadn't actually considered that before, but it makes perfect sense. Right? I don't know why, it just intellectually why that hadn't occurred to me. Because I was having the same kind of problem in a lot of ways, right? I'm like kind of like, how come, like some of my content and the conversations I do and stuff, it's like really interesting, but not getting that much traction of trying to understand that. So maybe, what you were describing is true. So yeah, that's why it stood out in my mind.
It's true of a lot of light workers that I've met. They are working so hard to be seen, and it just doesn't seem to matter what they do. They're wearing the cloak of invisibility. So I'm talking about it now here and there when it comes up and teaching my people about it. So first thing is to be aware that it's there
Yeah.
and then to consciously work to release it.
Yeah, I can, after you made that comment, I started to think about it and I'm like, oh my God, I know people who are just absolute, like literal geniuses, like
Mm-hmm.
incredible intellects, but they live completely obscure, hidden lives, like doing manual labor and stuff. Just like it's always kind of baffled me. Like, and some of them have like incredible credentials to go along with it, not just, natural abilities, but they live very quietly. You would never know them. You walk past them on the street or something. And I can think of a lot of people like that.
Well, there might be a distinction though. Are all of those people wanting to be seen?
Well, what I'm
Are
saying
they
is that
trying to be?
they're spiritual people. They know, like they're interested in these kinds of things, the ones I'm thinking about. Definitely, right? But they hide out kind of. They're hiding out. You know what I'm saying? Just I'm
And
affirming what you were saying.
most likely, if you did past life readings with them, you would find those traumas.
Yeah.
Like I had a memory of being drowned on one of those drowning boards that they did back in the Salem times. And it's like, oh, now I know why, since I was a baby, I freaked out when people put water in my face.
Oh God. It's traumatic just thinking about it. Like even
Yeah.
just conjuring that image.
And I have a client who she has a memory of being hanged in a past life. And I had posted this meme about coming out of the darkness, and I had chosen a noose as the image for that. And she wrote, when she saw that, it just triggered her so deeply.
Yeah. Wow.
So we all have those things, but we might not make the connection. So my response to her is, when you get triggered, that's a gift because that's a clue to you that there's some trauma that needs to be
Yes.
healed.
Yep. Yep.
So,
Yep.
so don't run away from it and ignore it. Face it.
Yep.
Figure out what it's connected to, release it so that you don't get triggered in the future.
Yeah. You don't want to be victimized by that kind of what seems to be irrational stuff. But I mean, there's certain things that trigger me too. Like when I was a kid, even from when I was a kid, I grew up spending the summers near the ocean, and we were always in the water, right? But if we went offshore out in a boat somewhere, quite a ways, a couple miles or something, I literally could not look overboard.
Hmm.
It would just cause me to panic. Like
Yeah,
that's just an
I'm like that.
example.
Yeah, I don't want to do a cruise because the thought of being out there in the ocean just terrifies me.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
it goes back to being drowned.
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's just an example of something that is triggering and kind of irrational.
Hmm.
That probably like if you do past life readings, are you able to go into these kinds of things and say, oh, here's the root of that?
Yeah.
Is that part of your therapy kind of?
Well, I do two readings. I do the soul introduction where I help you to, connect with your matrix and understand yourself so you can dive into that. And then once you've done that, I do karmic blocks where we look for the things that old traumas that are affecting you in the present, because there's many of them. We're not going to get them all. We're going to get the ones that are important to this lifetime.
Right.
So, how did it start? What was the core story? What
Yeah.
did you do? What happened to you? And just hearing the story starts the healing. It's
Right.
incredible.
I would totally do that. Like, because to me, there's certain things that are not rational. Do you know what I mean? Like in my own experience, I'm kind of like there's habits and patterns that repeat that just I can't make sense of them. Like I just can't come up with a rational explanation. So I always assume that this has to be past life traumas and things that are involved.
Yeah. Repeating patterns very often are
Yeah.
past life.
Right. And so, yeah, well, that's interesting. So maybe I'll talk to you about that. Is there anything else that you wanted to comment on or thought we should?
Nothing else I can think of. We really covered the gamut.
We did. We did.
I
I,
think at
I
this point, it's just take the information for what it's worth, let
right.
it soak in. And
Yeah.
the other thing I always tell people is that I'm telling you what I know to be true. It could change tomorrow. And if it does, I'll tell you that. But also use your own discernment. This is huge right now because you're listening to what you, John, and I are talking about. This is our truth, our reality. If you've got a different one, I'm not trying to change your mind.
Right.
I just want to share you what this perspective is. And that's really important because that goes back to being the sovereign soul and not getting sucked in to somebody else's story. So really listen to it. Like there's this channel I know that it just repels me because this guy is out there talking about how we're being slaves and enforced to incarnate. And that is just not true. We're making this choice. But this guy's got over 100,000 followers
Oh
who
God.
are believing and being sucked into that. And there are many other examples like that. It's not for me to go out there and tell all those people he's wrong and I'm right.
Yeah, I've heard stuff that just literally made my jaw drop, and I was just like, "This is horrifying." Like, I can't believe. But I just assume that people make their way to my channel, and if they want to stick around, they will, and if we're in alignment, that's great, and if they're not, that's fine, right? Like, what can you do about it? You can't do much about that, can you?
You just put out the intention.
Yeah,
You roll out the carpet. Here's the information. Here's the love and the acceptance. If you want it, it's here for you. Come get it.
right. So yeah, you do like little monthly updates, so the energies for each month, right? That's really interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Once a month, I do a reading for the forecast for the month, what's coming. And one month it was cloudy with a chance of clouds. Like, okay.
Oh, what? Okay, do you have any info for August?
I
No,
haven't done
no. Well, I
August yet.
don't spoil your channel, but
Yeah, I haven't done August yet. That'll come, a few days before we get there. We'll just ask, is there anything you want to share about August that we can share with the people right now? So for August. Wow, I'm seeing like fireworks shooting. Ooh, there's going to be some activity. Is that political? Oh yeah, it's political. There's going to be some like bombshells. Yeah,
really,
yeah.
you're thinking like the States or elsewhere?
Are you talking the States? Is it the States? Yeah. Anywhere else? It's going to have a ripple effect. It's going to affect other places, but it's the apex, the not the apex, the origin. It's going to be the States. It's something that's happening here that's going to cause a ripple effect. But it's visualizing like fireworks. So it's like boom, 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 boom.
Is it stuff we're not expecting, or is it stuff that we're anticipating that will just occur at that time frame?
Okay. Are you talking stuff that we are already anticipating happening? No. So surprises.
Oh,
Will they be good surprises? Yes.
oh, good. That's
Surprises.
great. Thank you.
Okay.
We have something to look forward to.
Yeah. Yeah. It's about time.
That's so good news, surprising news, stuff that we're not expecting, and it's going to happen in August and it's going to be big. That
Yeah.
sounds pretty good. I'm up for that.
It does.
That's a
Yeah.
great place to leave on that note.
Yeah. Always be hopeful.
Exciting, optimistic, and waiting to be surprised.
There is so much juiciness coming our way. It's just a matter of hanging in there, doing your best every day, putting out the love, and it will come back to you.
Oh, I'm psyched. I've got my popcorn stash all ready to go. Been waiting for this for a long time.
Awesome.
Well, thank you very much, Deborah.
You're so welcome. Thanks for inviting me.
It was a fascinating conversation. And I'm sure, like I said, as soon as I get off, I'll think about 50 things I meant to bring up or talk about because I, again, could have gone off on all these little tangents all over the place, but there's only so much you can do, right?
Yeah. Well, this is a great starting point.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll put links in the episode description to any related content. And if you're interested in a reading with me, I'll put a link to that as well. Many sincere thanks to everyone who supports me, especially my YouTube members. Thank you very much. Take care, all the best, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye for now.